Off this fourth turn, yeah, we're a third of the way through already, and I don't know, played about an hour. This is not, I don't know what they have it rated at, like an hour and a half game. This is nowhere near that, I am pretty sure. Even if people are moving pretty quickly, I can't imagine. There's just too much to decide here. That's okay with me, but it is just something to keep in mind. So, as predicted, I initially forgot to get my 2 information from this. The reason I got it was I looked and said, hey, do I want to get an employee? Now, for the most part, hiring new employees going into a depression sounds like a terrible idea because the price is going to go down on employees and you're not going to be able to sell as much product and all kind of stuff like that. Everybody went doing so except for Purple, who felt like they were a little behind. And, you know, the 4-4 employee seems like a good idea. This guy has the human resources, but he couldn't afford it. Even with human resources, it was going to be a 3-3 employee, and he only has 2 information even after getting that network admin. So, you know, really kind of falling behind the 8 ball, not getting his engine tuned in the right direction. So, you know, he doesn't have very many actions here, even though he has, like, you know, a human resources department. He's the only person working it. And the same goes true with some other players who haven't maintained the proper balance. So like Red here, not a lot of cash, definitely can't afford to hire new employees. He has a decent number of them, but we were cash poor at one point and still kind of are, and not really looking forward to that, being stuck in that position. So our goal is to make money. There's only really one way to make money other than off popularity, which is to, I think somebody bought this, so that's right, which is to produce goods and sell them. And, you know, we can sell 2 goods with the factory, so that's probably going to be our main focus now, to try to crank that around. It's very hard to get your company humming along at the right pace. With their desperate need for money, goes and produces product. That leaves Blue the advantage of being able to grab the architect's office during the Depression, which is kind of sweet. Other people, largely, their efforts are determined by what they're lacking. Purple wanted to grab in on the first shot at the construction company. Not as good as the architect's office, but at least I get a first choice of the different options. You know, others converting to get resources that they need. So like Yellow producing some product so that they can then sell that, or some supplies or whatever, so that they can sell that. It's even worse. Because these flip over and look like other ground floor things, and you can't quite fit them in without flipping them over, I totally missed that I had this, so I'll grab that extra couple. People beginning to hang up their hopes here in terms of being able to do something this turn. So for example, Yellow had put the second product in place, but now I'm looking and seeing people are really going heavily into the advertising, and I'm probably not going to be able to get much. I was hoping to be able to get print cheaply, but Red used their advertising bonus to get in there. I don't have that advance, so I can't slip in there. And then, well, that means this ticket is going to turn into 2 networking, but I can see Green with no resources is going to be putting 3 chips in there, so I don't really want to just tie them, because if I do that, well, at least we each get a popularity. So that's one option. So I don't remember quite what I did. I think I used Meeting Room to generate some extra information, which I'm kind of worried about because nobody's filled this, and I threw my money away on building product instead, thinking I needed more money without realizing, wow, I'm screwing myself if this comes around, and now nobody's going to fill that slot, so I'm screwed there. I think I am going to want to compete in the networking just to get one level of popularity, so that, see, the problem is if I get that level of popularity, so what? I'll be getting $8 from that, which would be helpful if it triggers. But if the depression comes out with like 0, or if much more likely red ends up more popular, which looks like it's going to be the case, they'll be able to sell theirs for $8. They'll probably put their other one up in the $16 slot. I'm not sure, because it may be more important. So yeah, they've got the first and third option. So no matter what, they'll be able to get an $8 slot. So their first one's going to go in the 16. Their second one will go into the 8. The problem is anybody who places down here and doesn't get triggered drops down to liquidation and only gets $3, which is not a good deal when you're putting $2 to information and a cube in for the thing. You're losing money off of, well, you're losing resources overall. You make $1, but $1 probably isn't that worth it. Although in this economy, maybe it is a big deal. Lose large workforce along with reserves in cash and technology have put them in a nice position. So they were able to upgrade a number of these, plus they're baked in to buy one of these. They have enough cash and resources. Oh, I don't want to do this. I just realized something. So this is the purchase price. It's the 2.2 plus 1 or 0 gives me 3.3, which is slightly better than this and gives me the jump. But I still need the 4.4 for this. So I'm gonna need to rethink this. I did a production, and then I spent 3 of each to increase the size of my storage closet, which looks like a good idea overall. Having that extra storage closet means that, you know, the extra storage closet, the extra cube, meant that I could produce for next turn. I have those cubes ready when, well, we're hitting a recession, which isn't necessarily very pleasant either. But I actually need more cash than I have there. I need at least, now this could end up 0, in which case I could buy a floor. But my feeling is I need at least $5, 5 of each quantity. And that would be reserving this. So let's reserve those, which means I don't have enough to build an improved location. So I may just crank out the 3 technology again. Although, yeah, I'm not getting any tech this turn for next turn. So having some stocked up seems like a good idea. I'm also not going to get a lot of cash this turn because I have too many laborers. That's going to be problematic. So next turn is going to be kind of a fallow turn in a lot of ways. I've screwed the pooch, basically, the same way green has. Green has lots of victory points down, but they can't do anything now because they've used up so many of their resources. So they're kind of frozen. All right, well, we'll resolve these, and poor yellow gets screwed, but the others are going to get 10 points each. In green, neither one wants to put any money and resources in to fire these off, so they ended up both doubling up on popularity. All right, let's take a look. Reds is the easiest. They're the only person in here, and they've got 2, which gives 1, so they get 2 popularity. And they're going to be the first person to market. And also get the advantage in the marketing bonus. Yellow is next. They use all 4 chips to also gain 2 popularity, whereas green uses 3 chips to only gain 1 popularity. No one else gains anything from that, and their discs remain, which is one of the things is, you know, you can bank discs in networking, and eventually maybe they'll come around to giving you some value. That means we have to make our choices here. What does red want? Money is probably the most tempting because I can't remodel. Remodeling is usually pretty good, but we definitely are short on money and have been for a while, and it doesn't look like that's going to get rectified too easily in this economy. That means yellow's next. Now they would have liked the money, but they're going to go with the remodel effort because it only costs them, you know, they can afford the cost, and it's a pretty good choice. The question is whether they want that additional storage closet or the advertising bonus. I'm going to grab the advertising bonus. We've almost filled out our ground floor there. That means green's next. Now what the hell does green want? Again, short on cash. Not a lot of good options. But we don't have a supply cube. We're buying one. What do we want? We definitely don't want a supply cube. The extra worker is actually kind of neat for us, but I think the 2 info is just superior to that. And that puts us to blue, who has not lost their position from when they were more popular at one point. And they're left with a temp or a supply cube. I have no room for the supply cube, so I'll take the temp worker. And purple's next. Well, purple can't use the supply cube, but they fill it out. Over to the warehouse. This has already been paid for, so green gets their cube. If they had known the option they would have gotten, they might not have taken it. Now comes the hard part. Like I said, red wants to go into the 16. The reason is they're not going to be able to sell 2 goods. If you look at depression, it's, well, actually, it's 1 or 2. But we're not going to be able to sell 2 at 8, which means yellow can bump into the 8, red can bump into the 8. And now blue's left with, well, I'm not going to get to sell unless I sell at liquidation prices. So I'm going to jump up and take the 12. The reason being that high price will drop slowly and I'll get some cash later. Now we resolve the, and we have 2 consumers coming through, so that's going to be, they're going to go for the lowest prices and the most popular first. So that's going to be $8 each for red. And for yellow, sorely needed cash. And then these drop. Now blue has the option of which one they want to go down to. They'll take the $8 one. We'll see what happens there, but see, that's kind of dangerous because the recession, because recession is only going to allow between 2 to 4. If I go into the $6 though, it doesn't really help me. So, and likewise, red will drop to the highest value. The architect's office, well, since we had 2 of these, I didn't come out ahead. I owe 2 and 2. I thought it was 0-1 for the depression. I'm not sure why. That means I've got a problem, but not really. I just didn't have as much reserved as I thought I should, but I still get the first choice, which is pretty big. And I'll look through these and decide I'm getting a floor. There's no question of that. So that was 2 plus 4 is 6. That's what I paid on. This may have been a mistake because I had already decided, hey, I'm going fallow, right? Well, I could have taken the investor floor, which gives me $3, which would give me some cash to do something with. Also, I could have downgraded my employee pool. Instead, what I'm looking at though is, hey, I've got, already some product in place. I'm going to market the shit out of it. And so I took the marketing department, which allows me to spend 2 chips and get a free broadcast thing, which is pretty awesome because that automatically increases a popularity for each level of that I do. Plus, if I'm the largest, it gives me 1. Unfortunately for me, Purple decided to do the same damn thing. They don't look like they have as much interest in it, but they're just kind of playing a follow the leader thing here, I guess. I don't know. And then Black, who also had a choice available, decided on the in-house factory so that they can get things to retail without having to pay the 2 and 2. And that's pretty bonus too. All of these building improvements are really kind of a bonus, except maybe the empty floor if you don't decide to use it. So we're moving on to turn round 5 here, and that's where we are. So I see I screwed up with the empty floor, which seemed like a really cool idea even as it was, but actually it comes with a free tenant improvement. Now, obviously the tenant improvements that are available at the beginning of the game aren't the most exciting, but that would have been some resources that Green could have had available to them. It's also, it makes it worth 5 victory moves total. I just noticed this in a response to Slacker's video. One of the problems, of course, is there's only, the information is actually here. I just am incapable of seeing everything that I'm looking at. And so I glance and it looks like it's just, an empty floor. And I'm like, that's a pretty good deal still, because it gives me 2 more spaces for those tenant improvements. But yeah. We'll just keep playing as we are. I'm not expecting to discover anything exciting about the balance in the game or anything like that. I'm actually expecting that the game is fairly well balanced in terms of the different options that you can add, that you can add to your building. And it starts. Income's been received. I think I gave everyone their network admin income. Hard to tell for sure, but with the depression, coming out of the depression into a recession, even knowing that unemployment's probably going to drop us back down, it's very hard to say no to cheap labor, even if I don't have a really great plan for it. If I've got the capacity and money and information to pick them up, I do. So, this guy got a 2-2, and then both Green and Black got a 1-1 because they have the human resources. Now it's up to 4-4, and nobody's really terribly interested in that. Green really needed more labor, and Black probably did too. But it doesn't seem terribly worth boosting it too much at this point. Green especially, they don't have their training room built yet, so they're going to have to spend some effort to gear up, as it were, to where everyone else was. In popularity order, we start, grabbing the locations over here, basically. Because I have absolutely no self-control in a game like this. Red did fine, built one of these. Yellow then goes and picks this up. Now, Yellow has no information left. They can create more, but I'm not sure whether or not, I'm going to be able to get an item to market or whatever, just because I went and spent here, and I need at least 1 and 1 to get a tenant improvement on my floor. As we get to the end of this scheduling round, or part of the round, you can see the consulting firms all failed. And that's because everybody was kind of cash poor. People who weren't cash poor, for example, green here, well, they wanted their cash for building a floor and were hoping, hey, somebody's going to buy that, right? Well, nobody did. Nobody took the easiest and best, the easiest option, because nobody had the cash on hand to really invest in it. Now you can look and say, well, wait a minute, purple did. Yeah, but purple was third in line here. They have a fair amount of information. What we've been seeing is people cranking out cubes and running the information through research and testing. It's not the most efficient way to do it. This is far, far better if you can get this running. But it went flop because he was unwilling to help, say, green get a bunch of information this turn by investing for some later turn, which, you know, that's the thing. If you don't have the cash to protect your own interests, other people aren't going to want to do it. And blue didn't see an interest in doing it either. They had their cash already allocated. We do have a lot of advertising going on, mainly because of purple and blue doing their, you know, getting their special floor. They're going to try to take advantage of huge flow of advertising. So we'll see how that works out. First of all, nobody gets anything from these. Red gets 2 off of this, and they were in the lead, so we move them forward first. Blue is going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, putting them all the way at the lead. All of them get kicked off, whereas purple gets 2. And we have some significant differences in the popularity. How much does it matter? Well, not a lot of people are building stuff, so probably not all that much. And now we make our selections here. And I don't know why I go into this detail. It's so minor compared to everything else. Right. The real problem is it's hard to capture any sort of narrative in these types of games. And so it's either, yeah, I try to play it and show you each action I'm taking and explain the tactical reasons why I'm taking it, which is really miserable to me. You know, I'm willing to do it for a turn, but beyond that, I'm not getting the fun that I'd want to get out of the game. Or I come to this point and I say, well, you know, some people moved some cubes and discs and stuff around and things happened and now things are different. You know, people picked up things again that were useful to them. Blue, the remodel. The remodel is always a good deal if you have the cash for it. So they've been wanting the research and testing. That's really the way to get some cash in your pocket. The only way to get cash in your pocket. It can also give you information, which is sometimes hard to come by, but if you need cash right away, the research can get you that pretty quickly. The next was red. They wanted money more than anything else that they could get. They'd have loved the research and testing, but they couldn't grab that. Purple took some information. Yellow had room for the supply cube, so hey, you know, that's always a bonus. Green got stuck with the temp worker, and black got nothing. So stupid. Yeah, they haven't done any successful advertising yet, really. And neither has green, but they were automatically placed above black, so they're able to maintain one of these bonuses every turn from now on. Coming through the factories, we see both black and red place their pieces really high up. And the reason for that is because without a lot of people producing, with just one blue here, the recession is going to create 2 to 4 of these. Black doesn't really need a lot of money, so they said, well, you know, if 4 of them are produced, I get 16 bucks and that's great. Otherwise, next turn maybe I get 12 or whatever. It's not a big deal. Which means we flip this over, and this is sort of the randomizer to it, and only 2 are going to sell, which means blue and red are going to, you know, each get their sales. Now blue's not going to get a lot of cash for theirs. Red gets big money, and of course then these drop down. And the cost of building pieces has gone up for some people. So for example here, he had to pay he was in the architect's office. Not only the recession cost, which ended up being the same as construction companies, so he got first choice for free essentially. But he took the in-house factory, but that cost him 6 and 6 plus the additional 2 and 2 that he hadn't paid already. So it was a fair amount of money. That's going to allow him, though, to start cranking units through here without having to pay. That's pretty cool. It does cost him an extra labor, but with the marketing, it should work kind of nicely. Let's see who else picked things up. Red picked up a research lab, something he wanted to upgrade, right? Well, now he has the option to send cubes into here with labor to get 3 of each, and that's kind of sweet. Now, in the building itself, because these are limited to the number of uses, you do have to put discs, and you saw me doing that during the last game. That gets or during the last round. That gets confusing when you start putting discs for the marketing bonus, but hey, you know, one has to deal. Yellow here also picked up a research lab. Green didn't have enough money for a whole new floor. They had enough information, but instead they picked up premium product. That's going to give them $2 extra for each product sold. They covered up their meeting room with it, though, which means that is an advance they will not be getting. I needed these guys, so I don't want to cover either of them up. Black took an assembly line, works in with their in-house factory, so now they can, you know, create a cube and then send it to market. Create a cube, send it to market. So it's a pretty cool setup there. And now we'll just go to the cleanup. Again, the recession is going to drop unemployment all the way back down so that there's cheap labor available for everyone. After the income's been handed out, Blue's got one of them tough choices ahead. Cheap job market. $2 to information, I can get myself another employee. But this is the employee who I might not be able to keep, which is to say, if I run out of money at the end of the round, I'm going to end up losing him automatically because I won't be able to afford him because it gives a negative income. So that's kind of problematic, and I have to make a decision there. What am I going to be doing this whole turn? What am I going to be able to get? So, like, adding another layer of building will cost 6 plus 4, 10 and 10. I don't have that sitting here right now. Now, if I sold some goods, which maybe I'm good at, I'd be able to get an edge there. We're getting into a stable market, which means more goods can be sold, 4 to 6. If I'm not going to go for a building improvement, I can certainly afford the extra dude. But how am I going to get myself to a point where I'm just producing a lot of cash? And I don't know if I want to chance that. I just don't feel like I have enough comfort with the system to be able to say, yeah, I can get away with it. So then that, of course, brings it to Red, who's in similar position, really, except he's got a little bit more cash on hand. He's got the research lab, which allows him to generate cash fairly easily, which is something we don't have over here. We just have the research and testing level, which again, you know, $2 for each cube, but manufacturing's not trivial for us, so that's like 3 worker actions to get a couple of bucks. That's not a very good payoff. Yes, I get some information with it too. I think Red is going to go for it, though. And we'll see who else picks him up. Some people may pick up the... Green is certainly interested in picking another layer up, I think, because they have the human resources and the ease of training, so it should be pretty easy. Progressed a little way. Some of the people do not have a lot of resources but are going for buildings. So for example, Yellow here is going for a tenant improvement, actually, because they have those empty floors, so they can score some points and get something that helps by putting that in place. These aren't terribly valuable in general. They're not like the floors. Floors generally give you a lot. I think I really boned people by not giving them the extra free tenant improvement with the floors. We see a couple of people who are really having trouble, struggling to get ahead in those positions, and that makes sense. The when in doubt, build a cube makes a lot more sense the more advances you get, as you start getting things like the research lab or even just the research and testing improvement. You can crank those cubes through and do something of value with them to get the components that you need to continue with what you're doing, and that's kind of what we're seeing. It's kind of an interesting quandary. They would have liked, they just improved their, got rid of their training penalty, but they would have liked to have dumped in what Green did here, an extra networking just to get a popularity, push them ahead of Green and Yellow, essentially. They couldn't do that, but they may well end up buying and advertising. Nobody's been doing that because there's so much free advertising available. Buying advertising to pump their way into 3 of these, they'll get 2 points of popularity off of it. They have an item for sale. The other option, of course, is to put another object up for sale. Now, they probably won't get to sell any of their items, though, is the danger. They could, of course, maybe get one down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Probably not. So they're not going to see any cash coming in for next turn unless they get a marketing advantage, which will allow them, I don't know, what does stable give us? Stable gives us 4 to 6, which means basically it's going to probably be the low-cost items that are actually sold. So since we got in so late in the production side of things, we're not going to get one of those low-cost items this turn. Of course, we could bank ourselves so we get 2 of them next turn, you know. But other than that, yeah, we're not going to get the option regardless of what we do with marketing. So we got kind of a problem there. We did go in for the consulting firm because we don't have an easy route to get information. We have an easy route to get money because we have the assembly line and the in-house factory, which allows us to just crank cubes and turn them into stuff. You don't see much of that happening here. I guess, go here, boom. Black's going to take this to double up, get control of the networking. What that means is purple gets 1 popularity for the broadcast. Let me try to keep these, because black is actually getting 2, and they're going to end up below purple. No one else gets anything from networking. This is kind of painful. Red is going to get 2, but blue is going to get 3. And the reason this is kind of painful, red only had 1 in print. They only got 1. The reason this is kind of painful is you have to maintain the previous ordering among people who end up in the same space. So there's a little bit of, I'm not sure, you know, how to track that. It should be easy enough to keep track of. And now we have to make our choices of what we want. Well, blue can't take the upgrade option because they don't have enough cash. Now, they're hoping to make some money, but they don't know how much they're going to make. So at this moment, because they can't really, I think they're going to make 6, which is enough for this, but it means they don't have any cash on hand for next turn. And because they're not producing money, in their Turnley income, this could be a problem. Now, they may take something that gives them cash straight up, but it's safer to just, money's obviously a restraint on them no matter what. Red, however, definitely wants the remodel. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. I have a few options. I'm not terribly interested in research and testing because I have the research lab. So I think I'll just improve the size of my storage closet, which is something I've wanted to do with everybody, but it's tough to get around to. Every time I've tried, it's like, it's not going to work. That puts it on purple. What are they going to want? Well, they can't take the supply cube, so it's between info and a temp worker. The info seems more valuable, especially since they're poor on everything. They're not getting any extra info, so that's definitely there. Why do I have black? Black can't take the supply cube, so they'll take the temp worker. And then that leaves it to yellow, who, hey, they can actually take the supply cube. Otherwise, they'd just be burning the space. So that's kind of cool. Warehouse, nobody took anything. Factory, now here comes the interesting side. So we know that only 6 are going to sell, which means purple wants to place in that $8 spot. People who want cash, you know, green, they're not rich. They're definitely going to want to put at the cheap end of things. Does red need $6 all that badly, or do they want to place higher? I think they'll play in the $6 and grab that. That means black's in place here. Now they're not going to get their $12 this turn, but if they place here, they might get both the $8 slots. Of course, the problem is blue gets to place, and they get to guarantee themselves one of the $8 slots for that. Now we go to the economic forecast, and we see only 5 are going to sell. We do that in popularity order, which means, is it one at a time, though, is the question. Haven't gotten this kind of question come out before. Yeah, I think they go for the most popular. It's not one at a time, which means that blue, reds, and then purples will sell theirs. Green is going to get dumped down to liquidation. They're just going to get $3, which means they probably shouldn't have put their piece there, except that, hey, it could have come up 6. You know, blue's got a tough decision as to which expansion to take. So the assembly line, hey, that's always great. It allows you to create cubes cheaply, at least a couple of them. The conference room, that's kind of appealing too, since I'm not in the consulting. That gives me, you know, the ability to turn workers into 5 technology or whatever. The investor, hey, $3, just boom, right in your hands for nothing. Wow, that's neat too. Now, of course, because I'm going to be short in both money and in technology, the IT department, technology without having to work for it. And then probably the most valuable is the construction admin. But I won't be able to use this next turn because I'm going to be too poor. So, you know, well, maybe I could get a tenant improvement. But basically, I'd be getting, for 4 pieces, I'd be able to get this in here. And that's $4 and 4 technology, just using workers. It's 1-1 for each. But geez, I just don't know which one to choose. Anyway, it's getting to the point where it's very difficult, and it has been in a lot of ways. The choices are not, you know, an obvious, due to your position, which way you want to go. Usually, you have weaknesses in many directions in this game, it seems. Being kind of cash poor, they like the assembly line just because they can convert things with the research and testing or whatever and get some cash that way, get some technology that way. It may not be the best setup possible. It's better to have the assembly line with the research lab, but we didn't have that option. So this seemed most valuable to them, but then Red scooped this up. They're kind of rich. And Yellow had to pay 8 for their third floor, or fourth floor, as it were. Remember, once the 5th floor is added, this is over. But there's room to go up 6 and 7 floors, which can give you a lot of victory points. It's just at the end of the turn in which a 5th floor is achieved. So this is threatening, except they don't have the resources to be able to take advantage of it. But they do have the resources to add to their empty floor, which is why it seemed like a good idea to them, and then they might be able to actually grab at least one floor here and maybe get the rush on everybody else and build the building quicker than other people have. So that gets us pretty much to the cleanup phase. At this point in the game, at other points it might be because, hey, I screwed up or whatever. At this point in the game, downsizing starts to become more intriguing because you could reduce your number of workers, get enough cash if you have technology already available. For example, you could put yourself in a position where you're capable of maybe filling out that 5th floor a little bit more, you know, a turn ahead of time or something by grabbing some extra cash. I don't know if anybody's in that position where they're really rich in technology. This guy is kind of in good shape coming forward in technology, assuming that somebody fills it. Now, for $6 he can do that, but $6 is something he doesn't really have. And I'm not quite sure the consulting firm, I'm not sure anybody's going to fill out his consulting firm position. So maybe he really needs cash. Now, how can he get cash? He can get cash through building or through his research and testing. So I'm tempted to actually downgrade for that $3 because I'm just not going to have much otherwise. But I can get products to market. I'm not going to be... See, here's the thing. No matter what I do, I don't think I'm going to be able to buy a construction company space. Because if I spend that $6 on the technology to assure myself the 10 tech, where am I going to get that extra money ahead of time? $3 doesn't quite get me in here. Now, a research and testing gets me up a little bit. Yeah, I think I'm going to downgrade black. I don't think anybody else is in the position where they really need cash and have technology coming to them. But I may be reading the board wrong. Yeah, that happens. The addition of these construction admins has caused quite a few of these placements, yellow and red, have that. But other people feeling the pressure of, oh wow, everything's going to get grabbed up, all the victory points are going at once, it's time to start investing in them, so make sure we have them. So everybody else is throwing money and resources into place to get a bid in on those. And then becomes the problem of, well, what can you get out of it? So like yellow, they can fill up their empty floor, but that's about all they're going to do. Red can build one new floor, but probably the other thing is going to be an improvement, a tenant improvement. And likewise, some of the others, green for example, looks like they're not going to be able to afford a floor, but you know, it's sort of a, well, got to compete somehow and try to get into the game again. And plus, the level 3 one is available for these, which is worth a few extra points. It's it may not be a great idea because some of the level 2 ones, you know, that level 3 would be worth 1, 2, 3, 4, whereas the level 2s are worth 3 each, so it may not be that big a bonus to grab one of those. Just finding themselves in some difficulty here. So nobody's picking up the consulting firm because they think the game's going to end on the next turn. It's certainly not going to last too long, so if you bought this, you'd have to buy the next one as well. Well, maybe money's not necessarily your biggest worry. For Black themselves, they don't have enough cash on hand. Now, they can create the cash. They would have to produce a cube and then do a research for both money and technology, and then invest all of their money. Now they have a lot of money coming, but they'd have to invest nearly all of their money to trigger this and get a bunch of that. It's probably worth their doing, but that's kind of where they're stuck right now, and we'll see, because I'm pretty tired, so I'm gonna wander away and probably not remember to do that. The game's unlikely to end next turn. I was misremembering. It's 5th floor improvement, not 5th floor. Bad choice of wording that stuck in my head. And so far as the economic forecast, with the factories, Black placing most, filling out the bottom half, forcing Blue to go up here. They could have gone even higher, but with a recession coming forward, that doesn't look like a great idea. In fact, anything lower than, anything stable or less, anything but a boom, you kind of want to sell at the lowest rating unless there aren't going to be a lot of people playing in there. The big boon here went to Black. In terms of these, Blue, who has the highest popularity still, ended up having to go for info because they didn't have a buck on hand for the expansion. So Red got the bonus 2 victory points, but they're out of options on that now because they flipped one over for this. So far, Green hasn't, I think, been able to use their premium product. They haven't sold any goods, which is not a good sign. You know, when you have a cool advance and it's not giving you anything, it's not a good thing at all. I mean, if you have any advance that's not giving you anything, it's a bad choice. So for example, this empty floor here, now that should have one thing in it, but that didn't happen, so because I cheated. So the market is a 4 for both unemployed and consumers, which means that Blue is going to get to sell 1 and Black is going to get to sell 3. The rest are going to dump down into liquidation, which is okay, but it's not really, you know, it's okay because Black has this now, but that's a lot of counters being used. That's 3 work effort to produce each item. So that's not a lot to get $3, you know, a buck per work effort. But money's not the easiest thing to come by. They have a lot of technology, so that's probably okay. Let's look at some of the choices. Some of them were pretty hard because, for example, the level 3 stuff has things like these that are just worth 8 points. The retention achievement, which if I keep my 5 employees, is worth 10 victory points at the end of the game. Nobody really went for any of these because they're they don't give you anything for your next round. So getting a floor, if it's not going to end real soon, getting a floor that isn't going to give you any additional bonuses, just a pile of victory points, seems like a bad idea. Now, some games, that's not the case, and I don't know if this is one of those. In some games, you want to grab the big victory point things, but it feels like I'm too close at all times to not being able to do what I really want to do in terms of getting an additional floor or whatever. Right now, everybody's at 3 additional floors except for Blue and green. And green is, of course, doing very, very poorly. But they were cheated against and otherwise. So in red's case, they picked up the conference room, which allows them to get technology. They don't really have a great path towards getting that, although they have the research lab, which is kind of nice. I'm not quite sure why they picked that. They have a high enough popularity, though, that they can maybe sell some product. I don't know. And they also got the premium product, which if they do sell product, I'll sell them. They'll be able to buy, sell 2 per time. Blue, I think they were just short of being able to get it. They were a tech short, and I knew this was going to happen. So they got the PR, which means their popularity is just going to stay there. That's pretty impressive, actually, for them. Yellow got the construction. No, they had that already. They got the PR bonus as well and an internship program because they had 2 slots. Both they took cheap rooms. This does not make a lot of sense unless you have a lot of these, because with just 2 extra, it's like it's an achievement, but it's only worth 1 more than the regular achievements are. They give you something, so that was definitely not an option. Over here, we played the internship program on top of the human resources. We're not planning on getting our employee base higher. We're just having too much trouble getting money anyway, so we'll stick with what we have there. Office renovation. He has a lot of renovations available. These are worth 2 victory points each, plus they can give you some advantages. Maybe not the best choice, but I kind of said, well, if it's ever valuable, it's valuable to me. Yeah. Now that runs into the Shadowrun problem, right? If a troll's ever useful, you want to make it this way. Yeah, but a troll is never useful. Like, it's vulnerable to magic and it's slow. And here, well, this may not be a great choice. I am always hoping that there are no bad options that are just, you know, going to be bad no matter what. Black over here took the conference room for extra tech because, well, although they got a pile of tech, they spent it all on the next level, so that's what goes there. And now it's cleanup time. And I got to be careful not to drop the popularity of the couple people who have whatever that is, public relations. What I'm pretty sure I screwed up is I didn't give a supply cube when I got the storage closet. Other times when I've thought about it, I may have, but it's hard to remember because there's no word here that helps you. There's a difference in picture between the 2, which maybe that'll tell you something, but I don't know. That shading shows up on some of these, kind of. I can't tell. So if you don't give me words on the actual tile, it doesn't really help too much. And I probably am owed a cube, but I can't be certain. The problem with stopping to talk about that is I've forgotten where I am in the play order, again, because it's just this, and I'm not, you know, you can't move one off and flip it over or anything like you can in 18XX. So I don't know, I think maybe blue just went, but maybe they didn't. Maybe somebody else just went. And there's no easy way of keeping track of that. I can see it very easily where somebody's turn gets skipped or something, even in an opposed game. It certainly happens here. How big a deal is it? Well, we've had it happen. It's not that huge. It's like forgetting to put a cube here, you know. Somebody gets screwed, something bad happens, who the fuck cares? I'm just pushing cubes around, right? Come down to the end, red, had they had that storage, that extra cube, if they were owed one, it probably cost them ending the game here. They have 2 discs in here and enough money that they could have converted it and gotten, say, I don't know, an extra 3 and 3, and I think that would have given them enough. Certainly they have enough money. They, I think, would have been a little short on technology, but maybe they could have balanced things a little differently so that they could have gotten 2 extra floors and ended this. As it is, nobody's going to get those 2 floors at once, and some people are trying to catch up to some degree or another. Poor green is really not in great shape. So over here, Purple paid off its consulting fees for another turn, so they're able to get a bunch of tech. They need that in order to pay for their next floor. They've got a couple of products out there to help pay as well. Looks like nobody got anything out of the advertising. People threw extra chips in just because as you start losing your beginning rooms, like the meeting room, which allows you to get attack, it might be that you only have the advertising room, and a couple of people are in that position for whatever reason, where they get to throw a chip into networking. They have nothing else they can do with a singular chip. So all that actually happens is that blue gains 2 popularity, which they will not lose. So that's pretty impressive there. And then I have to figure out who takes what. The placement into here was actually pretty interesting. Blue already had one. Purple put their first one in at the 8th spot. Then we came around to green, and green saying, well, with what was left, the number of chips that are left, I'm probably not going to get to sell something, which means it's going to be put as liquidation. Do I have enough money to buy the building piece that I need? Well, yes, I only need 6. It's not optimal to have that little money, but I do have ways of creating cash, so hey, plus, well, see, if I sold at liquidation, I'd get an extra $2, which kind of makes it better. But anyway, I pumped up the price a little bit because I'll be dropping down into one of these spaces, which is more valuable, of course, if it sells, which with my popularity may not be guaranteed at all, because people may be counting on their factory goods to build their next floor level. You don't know. But I didn't need the cash this turn, so it seemed reasonable to me. Well, blue followed suit and put their next one up here because, hey, I'm already selling with 1, and I have the highest popularity. If there are 4 for sale, I might be able to get the big money for this. If not, next turn I've got money in the pipeline, which meant purple went in here. And now we flip this sucker, and oh, it's not too good. It's only a 2 get to sell, which means we're going to be selling only the top purple and blue one. This one's going to go for 3. Blue had the first option to buy one of these suckers, and they have the cash and the value to do so. Started looking through the different options, and sure, there's things like the accounting department that can create a lot of money for me. That's pretty cool. I don't think the other one, the conference room, I don't think that one's available anywhere else. And alternatively, these things that just produce money, some kind of value during your income phase. But there was one that looked ridiculously good for me in terms of a victory point thing. Now, I'm worried that it is ridiculously good. It's this marketing achievement, 5 plus 2 for each level of popularity. Now, the question comes to mind is, well, what exactly is a level? So, if these are levels, these little rectangles here, which don't seem to have any other meaning, then it's only 11 points, and there are other things in that range. If each little space is a level, which seems more reasonable in terms of the rules, except that there's some reason these are divided up. Now, there's no reason that these are divided up that I can tell, and they seem very carefully divided into different, size pieces, and I have no fucking clue why that is, except maybe this is the starting space. Okay, so there's no definition of level that I can see anywhere. So if it's each space on here, counting this as 0 or 1, or this as 0 or 1, the whole thing, I'm not sure which, again, not specified, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those. That's 16, 21 points. That's going to be the game if that's the case. And it's not that hard to get your popularity up to that height. So I'm assuming that it's only 6 points or maybe 4 points, in which case maybe I don't want that and I don't fucking know what to do. I'm going to look through the rules some more, try to see if that's in there. It doesn't seem to be. Maybe there's something online about it. Blame the pictorial representation here, which doesn't leave room to explain this. Normally, you explain the components at this point in the kinds of games that I'm used to. And you're like, okay, so here's the popularity track, and then these are the levels, or each of these is a level. No effort is made to use words for this, though. Maybe these little post-it notes tell you somewhere in there. Again, not something that I'm likely to read unless, you know, because they're obviously just ancillary to the rules. They're not part of the rules. It's like grayed out boxes and stuff. Yeah, there's shit that maybe explains something. So they talk about spaces. They don't talk about levels there, because everything's on spaces. There's no discussion of level here. I have the feeling that it has to be 2, 4, and 6 for this. If you're in the first level of the first layer, whatever, of the popularity chart, it is the first level. That's the only one that kind of makes sense, because otherwise it's kind of a crappy buy. If you're all the way up here, you're still only getting 9 points, and there's clearly better choices that get you 11 when you're at the height. And unfortunately, the actual thing... here it actually does spell it out right there in the rules as to what is a level. So yes, 2, 4, and 6. So I don't know if that's the one I want to pick up. And you know, it's funny, I looked here, but because this is different color and kind of, that's not important. That's how I read rules. Give me all text, and I probably see it all as of value. Give me something that's set aside in color, and it's immediate, you know, it is different, more brightly put out, whatever. My brain intrinsically filters that crap out, because I'm so used to like more modern magazines and everything having all kind of garbage in that kind of stuff. And what you want is the text. You don't want this. This is like the for dummies stuff, right? So you just don't look at that. You try to filter that out, and then if things don't make sense, maybe you go back and look for them, which is luckily what I did there. So I don't know if that's my best choice. This is guaranteed to be the second to last turn. The choice is actually really tough as to whether to go for an achievement tile here or to go for one of the ones that allows you to keep building. And by the way, I think red might have been able to get to 5 anyway. I forgot their popularity bonus. They ended up taking a supply cube, but conceivably they might have been able to take money or technology that would have boosted them over even without that extra cube that they were having. But I wasn't counting on that, and wouldn't have been able to predict which one I needed, probably. So they should be in the lead, but that's not guaranteed at this point. Anyway, they made a choice to go for one of these achievement, as did Blue. Blue went with that. It's worth 11 points, you know. That's pretty good. But other people chose other things. So, for example, Yellow chose one that allows them to be more likely to get another floor, or maybe 2 floors, or a floor and, you know, one of these advances. What Red did also, they picked up the TI achievement. Mainly, they weren't interested in either of these, and at this point in the game, it doesn't make much sense for them. They don't have something programmed here. So this one was worth a victory point more to them because they already have tenant improvements in place. Over here, Black took the office renovation because there's a couple of points available to them by using that. maybe they'd be better off getting an achievement than that, but it's possible that they might want to use the storage closet. Remember, it comes with an extra cube. And then the advertising, hey, you know, maybe they want to use that as well. Green went with the accounting department because they're kind of low on cash and think that they, although they have some coming to them, and think that they can crank that around. Now they're really kind of looking at, hey, I'm on a race to last place, and you know, there's really no other option here. Over here, purple took the Skyline achievement. This is probably one of the better achievements. It's one per floor you have. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 5. It's worth 9 points, and if they get another floor, that puts it up to 10. So the in general, if you're in the competition for the game, that's probably a pretty good one. Some of the others, like the improvements, that could actually go to 11, just like the marketing did. But it's unlikely. But it's pretty likely that if you're in competition for the game, this is going to score you 10 points. The generic ones, things like the corner office, these are just 8 points. There is one other that's kind of cool, which is the executive achievement. For each of these achievement floors that you have, these special floors that are just achievements, you get 2 points. But you probably can't get too many of those. So that looks like it's probably a 9-point value. You know, if you've already got one baked in, you can get some more points in there, but that's it. All right, so now we go to the you know, little maintenance phase at the end of the turn, and then go forward. Turn has a very different feel from the other turns. For one thing, nobody's going to pick up, you know, the cheap job applicants. It's just not worth it unless you have, oh, what is it? The achievement for the most, for the retention or whatever, which Red might go for because they have that already. It's a 10-point achievement for them. But the effort to get it for anyone else is kind of expensive. Although honestly, people who have the HR department, did anyone have it? Because they might have wanted it. Because it doesn't have to be a functioning laborer, so you could just have it there on the off chance that that's the best achievement that you can pick up. That's one side to this. I think everybody's covered that achievement up. This guy had it. Oh, he has it. He might have wanted it. But because he could get it for no money. Let's just give it to him. He could have picked that up without any penalty at all, because he doesn't have to pay the income. But he's not going to want to train them. There's no point to that. The other thing is, well, one of the cards isn't going to get used. And that's something I didn't realize. I thought we dealt out the amount of cards we needed. But the main thing is everybody's just trying to get enough money to put in their bid on the construction company, and maybe even they'll go with the architect's office, except that's kind of painful because that's going to cost a lot during a boom. A boom means you're going to pay at least 8 and 8 for something that you pay 4 and 4 for. That does not sound likely to be a good payoff. There's probably something that you can do. 8 and 8 means you could get 2 of these. So if you could get a floor, you can probably get one of these as well. And that's worth more victory points than whatever difference you're probably going to get on the floor is. Like, there's 8-point achievements out there, and these are worth 3. So if you get stuck not getting an 11, you'll probably be able to get an 8. Nobody's going to be going for these lesser things, the non-achievement floors, because they won't get an option to use them. So people are trying to collect up enough money to get early placement here, though. And a couple people already had the cash, so they threw it in. But somebody like Blue, trying to get to that 4-4, they've got it now, and now they'll be placing, you know, the 3rd place choice, which may be fine for them. It may be that their building is such that they get an advantage that nobody else is interested in anyway. But you want to get your placement there just in case somebody else you know, take something from you that's equal value to what they can get, but it looks, you know, like it's going to hurt another player. This is the point, like in games like Age of Renaissance, where I really sort of fall apart, is right towards the end. Even if I'm able to hold up and do okay in the early part of the game, when it gets to the end and I've got a clear goal and I can calculate everything, it's where my AP is going to get horrible. And basically the choices are spend time figuring everything out, or just say, fuck it, I'm going to lose, and do what feels natural, which is, of course, what I'm actually doing here. Part of the reason for that is I plan on playing this again with my wife today, if I can. I want to get 1 or 2 games in with her before I come back with a review. Just because my intention had been that we would play this before I bring it to the table on the video. I like to do that with the Euros. If she's interested in them, I want to get them played. But because of the setup for this being just so ridiculously hard to discern without, and then how to actually play being also completely really vacated by this little iconography here. When you start, you know, making things too cutesy with the graphic design, you make the game unapproachable quite often, and that's what happens. You know, clever graphic design is what, as far as I'm concerned, killed Race for the Galaxy for me, and it almost killed this. You know, at the very least, though, for the most part, except for a few places where, hey, I've cheated because of clever graphic design, like the shading on this box. You know, come on, man, that's not going to help. You know, unless you have already made the mistake and then remember and play the game often enough that you keep it in mind. Anyway, the clever graphic design elements are what got in the way of me being able to play this. And you know, honestly, if I had borrowed this from someone, if I wasn't stuck owning this and had to try to figure it out from, you know, like let's say it was at a game shop, at a gaming cafe or something like that, I would never come back to it after looking at the rules. I would just say, well, that was just too much of a nightmare, you know. Anyway, my intention is to try to get some opposed gaming, at least 2-player, in before I review this. But, so I'm kind of trying to rush through things. Yeah, I've got time to babble, right? And I can see where I'm making mistakes, and if I figured everything out in advance, could probably do a better job. So everybody's going to finish kind of in a difficult position. Some people have some inherent advantages, but I noticed nobody used their construction admin. Instead, they paid cash. Well, that's not good, because it's hard to get the money. And, you know, yes, this is 4 chips, but 4 chips, is that worth 4-4? I don't know, but it sounds like the kind of thing that I'd have to figure out. The reason that I bought those floors was they do give an immediate advantage in terms of grabbing these without having to go through so much effort, and also they probably are economically a good choice. A perfect example of what I'm talking about. So I've got 2, 4, 6 discs here, which I've got set aside to upgrade these using the office renovation. That's a quick 6 victory points off of that, which sounds pretty good. But the problem is, I'm slated for something here. Now, maybe I'm better off getting a building, getting a layer to my building, or maybe I have to get one of these. But either way, I'm not set to get either of them if I build all of this. So I'm not going to get all of these, which I'd hoped for, which means now I have to try to figure out, okay, what do I need to get me at least one of these? Because I got to get at least 1 point of tech to get there. Well, I've got 10 points of tech sitting here if I can come up with $6, but I can't figure out how to come up with $6 at this point. The best I can do is 2 at a time, which would be 3 cubes, or 3 discs for $2. That would take all my money, or all my actions, whatever the fuck, you know. I've got like a fever and I'm trying to rush through this so I can get it done and play again. Because I didn't push through hard enough before. Which means, you know, I'm not going to get a layer to my building. That's obvious. And I'm going to have to cut into something to get one of those. I'm not going to get that 9 points that I was hoping for before. Perhaps because I didn't think carefully enough before the turn started. I hate being in that position. I hate feeling like, well, if I had thought it a little harder, I'd do better. It doesn't matter to me whether I win or not. I just hate making those kind of fucking mistakes. And that is where my AP comes from. And that is what's so frustrating about games like this. I kind of like to just be able to point and shoot, you know? And that doesn't work with most worker placement games. Once I get my little crank set up so that I just have to turn it, which is the case, say, with blue here or red, because I'm playing multiplayer solitaire, I still have to, every time I come back, refigure that entire thing. And there's room for a mistake there, of course. Less of that in an opposed game, but when there's little modifiers to it, they throw a real chink in the whole situation. It's kind of like, you know, counting the rail network in an 18xx game. That's the bad part of the game, you know? It's like you want to pack it up at that point, right? Well, and I really do often in a solo game of XX. I push my way through, and I'm doing the same here. But that's where my mistakes come through the worst. That's where a lot of the frustration in playing these kind of games comes, is at that final point where everything is calculable. You should just be able to spreadsheet it out at this point. And you can't really, because there's some interference with each other, just as there are the tokens in XX. The thing that reminds me of that end game in XX is every single player, I have to count 4, 6, 8, oh, I need 10 and 10. Again and again. It's just because it's not immediately obvious to me. Now, that will fix itself with multiple playings, I can guarantee you. And would not be that hard playing in an opposed situation. It's just that I have to deal with the different sized buildings. So most of the people are at 12, and I'm kind of getting used to that, but still counting every time. Well, I think I optimized actually fairly well, because everybody kind of broke down to where they wanted to be. Blue had some extra resources, but they threw them into building additional cubes, and they're looking at, there's what, a production achievement that's worth 11 points if you have 2 cubes on your map, which they're the only person who has that, so probably no one else is going to grab that. There's more value for other people to grab other things. Of course, depriving blue of 6 points might be worth depriving yourself of, you know, 3 or 4. Hard to tell. They're clearly one of the players in the lead. Purple, unable to use this, so boom, it's gone. Black and green both threw into the popularity contest because, not so much for green, but for green it's interesting because if they can get the remodel, they can get an extra couple victory points and come in somewhat less disturbingly last than they're going to. But for black, the interest is that if they end up tied, the tiebreaker is the popularity. So blue would win, but we're going to be picking up a lot of popularity on other people. In particular, we're going to get 2 for this and 1 for this, which is 3 levels of popularity, which puts us up to here. Green is going to get 1 level of popularity, which keeps them in last place, so they don't even get the marketing bonus. What could be gained here? Blue took a couple extra bucks if for some... This doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't really help them, but if someone was counting on money, because we're not going to get... We're at 4, 6, 8, 10 we need. We're not going to... Oh, yes, we will. We'll get a liquidation price. if we want, if this doesn't sell. So even if we don't get our sale, which we should be assured of because of our popularity, it would matter there. The next choice was black, who took a cube. In case they get that advantage, that's worth some points. They're not aiming for it, but red would have liked that. They took the remodel. That deprives yellow of getting the remodel advantage, which they could have used to their edge. So basically nobody got anything out of that. We go to the factory level, and here things are interesting. Boom says that there are at least 6 going to sell, which means, hey, let's go big, you know, right? It probably isn't going to make a difference because everybody's kind of tailored to, you know, if you look at red, they've got 14 here. They need 12 for the layer, and then 1 extra buck to increase one of these, so that their information is going to prevent them from getting any advantage, even if the money's there. But hey, it's there. And we'll see what we sell. And it's 7, so obviously everybody sells, which we do anyway. Yeah, that's a huge boon that the boom brought. There's like 32 bucks here. But there's nothing I can do with that, and it's not worth anything towards victory. If I didn't, you know, if I couldn't plan for it. And here's the thing. Could I have planned for it? Well, that's hard to tell because I had already placed a couple here early on, and then in order to get the advantage in placement, which maybe didn't matter too much. And then I only had so much technology I could generate out of that. So without predicting in advance what other people were going to do in terms of the factory and in terms of production, there's no way I could tell that I was going to be able to make that much cash. And all the little chips have been played. You can see both well, red did it. Yellow did not use their construction admin, and that was probably a mistake. And red probably could have used it twice and maybe could have gotten an extra floor by doing so. Remember, they were close to winning last time. I think red might be winning this game. Oh, that would be my prediction. Anyway, and if not, they kind of threw it away with a couple of mistakes at the end. The position over here was such that people were able to screw each other over by buying things other people wanted. So blue ended up with the executive achievement, which is only worth 9 to them, as opposed to the product cubes, because I think black took that one and they had the extra cube. There's a little bit of overage in some places, obviously the money from the economic forecast, but really I think largely things came out pretty much as, you know, close to the edge as they reasonably can. Sure, I got 2 extra and 1 extra, and if I had thrown some chips in here, but then I wouldn't have all that extra perhaps. So other than the not being able to adequately guess what the prices were going to be, because we didn't know how much other people were needing money. And that's something you could make some estimate on. You could take some risk on, and if you do, it could mean the difference between, you know, first place and last, if you're getting that. Anyway, I'll come back after I run through the scores, and that's just simply a matter of counting up the values on these along with the bonus values. So red's dominating position really was that. Red's got 59 points. The closest competitor is 41 or 43. Everyone else is actually pretty close except for green, and they're not that far behind. They're closer to everyone else than anyone else is to red. So red's like 16 points ahead of their next competitor. Green is only 10 points away from second place. So they weren't quite as hapless as they looked. And red, why did they do so well? Well, they really used the research lab very well. They also picked up, you know, when they couldn't get a floor, they set themselves up so that they bought one of these TIs, and that's not tank infiltration. tenant improvements. And then by getting the tenant improvement bonus, they ended up scoring a good deal of points there. They also had a nice little machine, like I said, with the research lab, getting 3 and 3 from that. Even though they probably lost a cube to the storage closet that they could have gotten. Let's take a look at the 2 people who had the empty rooms. Yellow had an empty floor. They didn't do too terribly bad. Let's assume that they could have gotten 3 more points and maybe some slight advantages, but who knows, because they filled up that space. The other person, of course, was green, who, you know, had serious problems getting their engine running. And I think that came down to they took way too long in terms of getting to sort of the medium level of employees. They were down to just like one guy working by himself for a long time. So that hurt a lot. Anyway, I'll send this one up. I don't know how much value there's going to be to the playthrough, the intro, or the review, but every now and then I do like to do a Euro. I like to do the ones I have just to investigate them, and you know, not doing it on film, I wouldn't do it probably. So this gives me an excuse to do it. Yeah. Sorry if you watched it and didn't have the reasonable level of intellect to turn it off after 3 minutes. All right.